terror, North Korea, and the cost of natural disasters, all giant worries. Yet the markets keep hitting new highs despite it all. So is Wall Street telling Main Street we're strong enough to handle it all? Hi, everybody. I'm Daga McDowell. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, Gary Kaltbaum, along with Lee Carter and Jessica Tarlov. Welcome to everybody. Gary K., what is the smart money telling us?
Well, first off, when you have all kinds of supposed bad news and the market has the best week we've seen basically all year, it really tells you everything you need to know. And just by way of example this week, Apple's going to sell 1 trillion iPhones when it comes out. Here with the hurricanes, Disney opens up a couple days later. The parks are already packed. So business is business. We're back to business, and the American people are going at it again. And I think the market's reflecting it right now.
And Gary B., we had names like Boeing, Caterpillar, even Dow DuPont hitting all-time highs on Friday. No fear there.
Well, I'm a little bit more tepid or conservative than Gary K. is. Maybe being more in, maybe I was more in the storm than Gary K. was. I know he was in Orlando, but I think this was a sigh of relief rally. I mean, here in Florida, frankly, it was horrible, but it could have been worse. We're still getting over the tragedy in Houston, but even that could have been worse. Anytime North Korea fires a missile, I think people give a sigh of relief that it didn't hit Japan and trigger World War III. I think the fundamentals are here, though. I mean, GDP is strong, although the hurricanes will hurt it a little bit. Median household income hit an all-time high, although even there we're just barely above inflation adjusted where we were 15 years ago. And housing prices are okay. They're pretty strong right now. And then finally, my daughter got a job, which says the economy is doing pretty good. So,
Gary B., your celebration alone because of that will add at least one whole percentage point to our national economic growth. Lee, investors telling us not to worry about everything that we've seen even in the last week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going well right now. We've seen earnings going really well. We've seen consumer confidence is increasing. And then when you see, I agree, that whole collective sigh of relief that things could have been worse. And now we're going to see spending on infrastructure that has to be done now. People are doing better than we expected them to. I think they're pricing in now tax reform. It seems like they're getting their act together on that. My big concern is that what happens if something does happen with North Korea? What happens if tax reform doesn't get done? What if gridlock continues to move forward? I'm optimistic now because we're seeing Republicans and Democrats starting to have conversations and maybe even compromise. But if it doesn't happen, I'm afraid that this market is going to soften.
But, Jonas, despite all of the concerns, you have 45 countries, developed countries, all growing this year in sync simultaneously. First time that's happened in a decade.
Yeah, the economic news is good. I'm hoping Gary's family hiring story isn't what they call a lagging economic indicator. Yeah, I will also say, like, look, I get it. You want to buy the dips. You want to stay in the market through news crises that are get trumped up that scare investors out. Historically, that's worked in your favor. Historically, buying stocks during problems with North Korea has been positive, even a month or two later. That said, everyone's kind of gets that now, and we don't get dips anymore. And you're at all-time highs. It's not like there's a weakness now and you should buy. It's already records. And forget, okay, you can make the case that North Korea is never going to be able to, or at least in the near future, hurt America. But South Korean stocks are doing well. You know, Japanese stocks are doing well. That seems to be a little too optimistic, in my opinion. So I think it's a measure, if anything, of over-optimism with the investor, even though I'm not saying that these hurricanes aren't manageable by our country and all these things aren't true that the other guests are saying. I just think people are a little too, yeah, it's all great. Let's go to record highs. I think it's a little bit of a sign of that.
Jess, maybe it's investors, particularly in this country, are okay, satisfied, even assured by how the Trump administration is handling all of these crises, whether it's hurricanes or even dealing with North Korea.
Yeah, well, the polling actually indicates that that's exactly what's happening here. Trump's personal approval rating is far below his ability to handle things like these crises. Overwhelmingly, the American public, certainly Republicans, are pulling up that number, but some independents and even some conservative Democrats are pleased with the tough talk approach to North Korea, for instance. and how he was in Houston and handled Florida as well. I do want to say big congratulations to Gary's daughter, though, fellow Bryn Mawr alum. So we have that going for us, and I love to see martyrs out there and gainfully employed. So congratulations.
But Gary B., that does go to the point that nothing of what we've seen this past week, the terror attacks, North Korea again firing another missile, and even these hurricanes, we are a resilient nation, and our economy is growing, and none of these things will stop that from happening at this point, and certainly aren't going to get in the way of 10% plus earnings growth so far this year.
Yeah, exactly. I want to come back. Your point on the resiliency, I think, is a strong one. It kind of, Jonas referred to it also a little bit. You know, in almost every major crisis, even after 9/11, the economy did take a dip, obviously, for weeks, but it sprung back. You know, the United States seems to be able to weather these storms. Now, are we kicking the can down the road? You know, all it takes is for an Irma to go right through Miami Beach and shut down the East Coast, shut down the electrical grid. All it takes is, you know, one nuke to actually hit Japan. And, you know, we're going to talk later about the debt. That's the other can. So I always think the United States economy is strong. I guess in the back of my mind, maybe like Jonas, I'm always waiting for the big one. But until then, it hurts to be out of the market.
Hey, but it doesn't pay, Gary K., to be fearful in these markets. You're not getting paid much at all to own debt when you can get a dividend from Microsoft that's almost the equivalent of owning a 10-year treasury.
Well, look, part of the equation is simple, and I've been saying it for years. We do have the easiest monetary policy in the history of time, with tons of printed money around the globe and negative interest rates in some places. That puts a floor under the market, but it lets cost of capital for corporations be very, very low, and that way they're able to grow profits more. And I think that's what the market's seeing also. And by the way, I do have to also talk about the optics of what we've been seeing over the last 2 weeks, and that's average Americans saving the lives of other Americans. And I really think that, you know, invokes some real strong patriotism. And I do really believe markets do look at that a little bit, and I think that's helped here, too.
Can I actually add to that, Gary? I think that's totally correct. And we've spoken about this before in the wake of all of this. But I'd also add that the optics of Heidi Heitkamp, for instance, standing next to Donald Trump when he's in North Dakota talking about his tax plan, and various other conservative Democrats who are running for re-election in states that Trump won by double digits, sometimes up to 32 points, also inspires confidence in the ability for tax reform to get done, as Lee pointed out. So if it doesn't happen, I think it's going to be a problem. But I think on all cylinders, you know, betting on America is a good thing to be doing right now.
Lee, I want to give you the final word on this, but when people see other people standing shoulder to shoulder and stranger helping stranger, that can't help but make people optimistic and hopeful.
It makes people so hopeful, and that's what I've been hearing as I've been talking to the American people over the last week and 2 weeks. And since Houston, people are really encouraged by seeing the American spirit come alive, by seeing everybody come together. And even I've been hearing that people are appreciating that the president was inviting Pelosi and Schumer to have dinner, and people are having conversations and making compromises. I think American people are pleased to see that.
Thank you, guys.